And if you think about it, the No More Heroes games are kind of like Quentin Tarantino films. You know, like there are those long, low energy bits of people talking, which is kind of like the boring odd job mini games of No More Heroes. And then when you least expect it, the film suddenly bursts into blood and guts and violence, which is kind of like the main missions of No More Heroes, where you kill a boss that looks like it was straight out of an Agatha Christie novel. You know, if Agatha Christie was on LSD the whole time. I mean, you just know Quentin Tarantino and Suda 51 think they're making these big, grand homages to the genre. Then actually, they're probably more making like low-rent parody when you think about it. No More Heroes games are basically Kill Bill, just with a masturbating anime fanboy instead of Uma Thurman. What? Oh, yeah, no, I'm ready. Yeah, let's go. Hey guys, I'm Comire, this is Star Select, and we're gonna break down pacing in video games. Think about any game and how you might describe it to a friend. Maybe pick a fighting game and it's about beating people up. Maybe a racing game and you have to drive the fastest. Maybe it's your favourite life sim where you grow enough vegetables to make the Jolly Green Giant pop a woody. Well, while you wouldn't be wrong in describing a game as doing one main thing, you're probably doing a lot more. You're managing upgrades, watching cutscenes, exploring the environment, doing alternative objectives, reading dialogue, or kicking the living daylights out of a 90s Toyota. Pacing is about what those actions are and how and when a player moves through them. For example, the Assassin's Creed games feature three main things: exploration, stealth, and combat. Some call these the game pillars. A normal level might have a player do some shimmying, then do some sneaking, then do some stabbing, then slide to another one, and so on. That's sometimes called the gameplay loop, the addictive cycle in all the best games. Uncharted uses navigation, puzzles, and shooting. Halo gets you to melee attack, grenade, and shoot. Super Mario has fun movement, different power-ups, and level gimmicks. They'll mix it up with a tower defense game no one cared about, and the occasional rap battle, but pacing mainly moves around a game's pillars. Games often have segments with a low amount of action, things like walking around, solving puzzles, picking up trash, as well as segments with a high amount of action, things like fighting, racing, or wrestling alligators while picking up trash. Frequently switching back and forth from low to high action makes a game feel fast-paced, while staying in one state for longer makes it feel slower. Keep in mind though, fast and slow pacing isn't the same thing as good and bad pacing. What feels right depends on the game's story, the game's gameplay, and how the game develops you to be the best toilet-dwelling amateur MMA Johnny Knoxville ripoff you can be. You see, as you play through a game, its various systems can make it so you unlock something new with the regularity of a Yorkshire Terrier's bathroom adventures. You might level up and increase your power, then unlock more dialogue options or cutscenes. Later, acquire a new ability. After, more outfits are added to a shop. When games space out rewards well, it maintains the motivation to keep playing, makes the time spent feel worthwhile, and makes our brains go whoop diddly wee when bigger numbers happen on screen. Despite the fact it will often take the same amount of time to beat the first boss as it does the 7th. And you thought you were getting better. And how the game ushers you through its world, its quests, and its story is important. In linear games where you go from one challenge to the next, this sort of takes care of itself. But in an open world game where the player can go anywhere, do anything, how can it make sure you see all its best bits at a nice pace, like a stripper with a minimap? Well, there are a few ways around this, like side quests. Extra missions can be sprinkled around the world to offer a different activity from whatever you're doing and keep up the game's variety. Be it mowing down aliens in designated battles or mowing down grass in a minigame that doesn't feel too far off actual community service. There'll be less of a chance you're only driving around the world or only endlessly killing enemies.
70, 80, 90, 20.
A good side quest can contain a condensed gameplay loop and its own narrative arc, with all the rises and falls in intensity that comes with it. They're almost like gaming's version of the B-plot in an episode of a TV show, and the full game is an entire series. I mean, effectively what I'm saying is every side quest NPC is Raj from The Big Bang Theory. Can you remember a really good side quest? Shout them out in the comments. Storylines in video games can follow the classic 3-act structure, with a setup, conflict, and resolution. Intensity generally rises as your skills improve, new elements and challenges are introduced, and the plot accelerates. It'll culminate with a final boss, and maybe a post-game that feels like that weird time hole between Christmas and New Year's. Video game plots can even set up cliffhangers, ending a mission on a high note in one place and starting the next somewhere totally different, forcing your need for resolution to drag you across the map like a powerless child while the mum does a big shot. Because when it comes down to it, all of these things are ways to take you from place to place without letting you get bored on the way. Like moving between the game pillars I mentioned earlier, or within those pillars, introducing something new or changing the situation slightly to keep the game moving. Why am I clapping? If a game pillar is exploration, in order to break up riding across a scenic landscape with all the interactivity of a Windows desktop background, the game will have areas with different aesthetics. You'll move through areas with different layouts, like narrow corridors, wide spaces, or cluttered rooms. Or you might navigate an area differently, like with stealth, or with a different layout of enemies, or added traps, or unlocking a horse, / motor vehicle, / flying wings, / sassy climbing weasel. If a pillar is puzzles, a game might introduce some time pressure or add in a bit of story as a clue. Or if story is a pillar, then during cutscenes, suddenly having combat partway through is a great way to shake up the player since they're not expecting it. In fact, random attacks kinda works during in-game explorations, during flash games in the mid-2000s, and during comedy gaming YouTube videos, you useless piece of And if a game pillar is the combat, interrupting it for a different action is a typical go-to, like a quick time event and a cutscene. The game could also add new enemies, transform them, or change their behaviour. The game could add or take away a weapon or ability. The game could change what you need to do to win, going from seeing how many boring side jobs you'll tolerate to seeing how many installments you can get away with before Star Wars file a lawsuit. Pacing can apply on every level of a video game. From the overall structure of the whole game, to the individual missions going through the game pillars, to the game pillars themselves varying up the action, to even the different parts of an attack combo, with the build-up, the dramatic slowdown, the final input, and the explosive climax. A good pace is like a good fashion sense. It varies from case to case. You'll only really know it when you see it, and it's pretty hard to put into words. Almost as hard as the jolly green giant next to a vegetable patch. And that's it, but steady on, pace yourselves, we're going to the Comire corner, where I'm spotlighting a video by Design Doc, breaking down why video games use elements like fire and water. Just like pacing, it's something you never quite think about until some guy on YouTube thinks about it way too much. I'm a huge fan of Design Doc and love all their videos, as should you, so find the video through the references link in the description. So, No More Heroes takes the mick out of everything in video games, but the way it handles pacing is pretty unique. Can you tell me what other games you've played that stayed good from start to finish? That they got no weird rushed bits or no bad padding? That every time you played it, you made good progress and had a good time while doing so? Let me know down below, or chuck me a tweet. And finally, I've been Comire. This has been Start and Select. Thank you, and good night. Game developers choose whether you have lots of health or if enemies move really fast in the same way they choose cartoony graphics or photorealistic graphics. It's all contributing to how they want you to feel when playing the game. Where, in the case of this lovable human panda bear, that feeling being suicidal.